You're a technologist. You love what you do. You value a workplace that celebrates diversity. You're looking to join a company that speaks up for inclusion, serves their communities, and drives meaningful social impact. And one that is also a cutting-edge innovator in the technology space. And you can't imagine finding all of this at one company. But you can. Welcome to Tech at RBC, a place where diversity and inclusion is more than just a value. It's who we are. Working for Tech at RBC means being embraced for who you are and the expertise you bring. We provide career-accelerating opportunities for women in tech, including access to programs, events, and resources. We value the imaginative ideas, skills, and global perspectives that Canadian newcomers bring to the table. We also offer support programs and workshops to further enable our newcomers. To make sure our leaders represent the diverse communities we serve, we work to move underrepresented BIPOC talent into senior management and executive roles. Fit right into the future of tech at RBC, where if something doesn't exist, we're already working on it.
Good afternoon and happy Friday. On est de retour. Bienvenue à la deuxième journée de notre conférence et salon d'emploi. Welcome back, UTs, for our second day at Career Job Fair and Conference. QueerTech est basé à Testaouni, Montréal, et nous aimerions commencer par reconnaître que QueerTech est situé sur des terres autochtones non cédées. La nation Kaniakinahi est reconnue comme la gardienne des terres et des eaux que nous rassemblons aujourd'hui. QueerTech is based in Testaouni, Montreal. We would like to begin by acknowledging that QueerTech is located on unceded Indigenous lands. The Kaniakinahi Nation is recognized as the custodians of the land and the waters we gather today. I'm just really proud of the work that our team have done. Yesterday was just such an amazing day, seeing everyone connecting, and so many interviews been conducted on the platform. We have over 350 participants that have joined us in the last couple of days, and there was over 642 meetings accepted when I had a look this morning. So it's really wonderful to see our community connecting with each other, connecting with our partner, and building long-lasting relationships. On est vraiment ravis de voir qu'on a plus de 345 participants sur la plateforme Brella. Il y avait 642 meetings de confirmés déjà ce matin. Ça fait un grand plaisir juste de voir que notre communauté est en train de tisser plein de liens entre eux et aussi avec nos partenaires. Aujourd'hui, vous allez voir un panel fantastique sur comment garantir l'équité dans l'avenir du travail. On a aussi 3 workshops pour vous que vous allez voir cet après-midi. Today, you'll be listening or watching a fantastic panel. It's on ensuring equity in the future of work that will be starting shortly. So join us to learn more about future of work and how you can upskill and reskill yourself and prepare for future jobs. We also have 3 workshops this afternoon: Exploring Software Development Career Path, presented by Wrangle.io; Up and Running with Rails and GraphQL, presented by Shopify; Skills and Competencies for Web3, presented by QueerTech. Just a quick reminder that we have a job board that's live, and after this event or during this event, you can also register on the job board and connect with our partners and the community. Also, as a reminder, Andy and I run community office hours every Wednesday from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern Time on Discord. So join our server and connect with us. There's over 100 people already on it, so it's really exciting to see the community coming together. It's a great way also to reach us anytime if you need any help or support. Je tiens à remercier nos partenaires présentateurs RBC qui continuent à soutenir notre organisation. Merci à nos partenaires de niveau Pride, Google Chrome, Shopify, Loopio et Tucows. Je tiens aussi également à remercier tous nos partenaires d'embauche d'avoir pris le temps de venir rencontrer notre communauté et d'embaucher de notre communauté. Vous pouvez en savoir plus sur chaque partenaire en vous rendant sur leur stand virtuel. Vous pouvez réserver du temps pour connecter avec eux, que ce soit pour une entrevue ou pour réseauter. I would like to thank our presenting partner, RBC, for continuing to support our organization, and thank you for Pride-level partners, Google Chrome, Shopify, Loopio, and Tucows. I also want to thank all of our hiring partners for taking the time to come and meet with our community, connect with our community, and hire from our community. You can learn more about each partner by going to their virtual booths. You can book time to connect with them, either for a job or for an opportunity to network. I also want to thank our community partner for supporting us and helping spreading the word in their communities across Canada. It's always great to be collaborating with them. And before I end, for those who love what we do and want to continue supporting QueerTech, you can donate to QueerTech on our website, queertech.org/support. So many of you support QueerTech every month, and we really appreciate it. So without further ado, I know everyone is excited for this panel, as I am, and I would like to introduce Jillian Leblanc, our moderator for the panel. Jillian is Senior Policy Analyst, Gender-Based Analyst Plus for Center of Expertise at the Government of Canada. Jill worked at the Treasury Board of Canada Secretary, where she served as the government lead for the Dr. Robert Bonder Career Development Program and was a creator and chair of the Government of Canada's Gender and Technology Working Group. She was also the Gender-Based Analyst Plus co-champion for TBS. In 2019, Jill was the lead for Feminist Open Government during the Global Open Government Summit and led on the co-creation of the Guide to Gender-Based Analyst Plus and Inclusive Open Government. In addition to her work, Jillian was the head delegate to the OECD representing the Young Diplomats of Canada, with her focus being equity in the future of work. So you see why she's the perfect fit for moderating this panel. Please welcome Jill, and Jill, over to you.
Thank you so much, Naoufel. I really appreciate that. And again, thank you, merci tout le monde, for having me here today, and thank you to QueerTech. I just wanted to start off, I'm not located in Montreal, so I'll start off with a land acknowledgement for where I am. I'm currently located on unceded Algonquin territory, otherwise known as Ottawa, Ontario. And I would recommend, if you are in Canada or on any lands that are Indigenous, you take a moment and think about all the ways that you appreciate the lands that you are on and the Indigenous peoples who are the custodians of time immemorial of them. So without further ado, thank you again for that lovely intro, Naoufel. And I will start by introducing my lovely panelists who can do probably a better job than I can of introducing themselves. So I will start off with MG. So go ahead, MG, and please introduce yourself.
Bonjour à tous. Hi, everyone. So nice to meet you. My name is Marie-Gabrielle, but everyone call me MG. So I'm originally from France, as you can hear with my accent, and I arrived in Montreal 18 years ago already. My career started in web agencies. I always worked and evolved in the web industry, but on the other side of the tech part for about 15 years. And when my brother Antoine approached me in 2016 to tell me about this innovative school called Le Wagon, he was attending at the time as a student. I was completely stunned. I was seduced by the mission of this school, very impressed by the quality of the curriculum, the caring pedagogy, and of course the impact of this training on students' lives. So I've launched it with Antoine in Montreal in 2017, and we were the first campus in North America at that time. So I'm going to just give you a bit of an idea of what is Le Wagon to understand. I won't be too long with this, but it's an international coding school. It started in France in 2013. And over the last 8 years, we've been training more than 14,000 people around the world. So we have 44 campuses now. And what we do is that we teach people the entrepreneurial mindset and technical skills they need to change their career, to upgrade in their job, or also to eventually launch a new business. So we do this through boot camps. I don't know if you know about boot camp, but it's very intensive, short, hands-on way of learning new concepts. And we do this in web dev and data science. And why I'm here today, I'm very honored to be invited in this panel because we value a lot diversity at Le Wagon to make the tech industry a better, inclusive, diverse place. And we've been partnering with QueerTech for a long time to support their initiatives and to support diversity in this industry. So our vision is that the tech industry is for everyone, and everyone should be able to access to this industry to continuously thrive also in their careers. And when we refer to everyone, we mean everyone regardless of their gender, their origins, their culture, their age. So I'm really happy to be here. Thanks, Gillian.
Thank you so much, MG, and we are very happy to have you here as well. Next, I will pass it over to Scott to introduce himself. So please go ahead, Scott, and introduce yourself.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Bonjour, je m'appelle Scott Sturge. Je suis le fondateur et PDG de VFC. Venture for Canada is a national charity that fosters the entrepreneurial skills and mindset of young Canadians. We believe that to be entrepreneurial is to identify and act upon opportunities to create value for others. The value that can be created can be economic, social, or environmental. And entrepreneurial skills include everything from coping with uncertainty to working with others to being creative. And we believe that one of the most effective ways to develop entrepreneurial skills is through work integrated learning opportunities at startups and small businesses. Essentially, that working in a startup or small business and seeing firsthand what is involved in building a business or organization from the ground up can be transformational to accelerate one's career and develop the essential entrepreneurial skills that everybody needs, regardless of whether you're a public servant or an employee in a startup or a founder of a new company. In 2021, over 2,500 young Canadians participated in our programs from coast to coast. We have a fellowship program where we support recent grads to accelerate their careers at leading Canadian technology companies. Around 10% of people who apply to the program are selected, and alumni of our program include the co-founder of ClearCo, which is valued in the billions of dollars, as well as many of Canada's leading technology entrepreneurs. We also have an internship program where we recruit, train, and support current post-secondary students to do entrepreneurial co-op terms across the country. And we have an entrepreneurship program where we support current post-secondary students to work on projects for small businesses across the country that are meant to be co-curricular. So in essence, students are working on these projects while they're still enrolled in school full time. And each project takes 5 hours a week over the course of around 7 weeks. If you're interested in learning more about Venture for Canada, I recommend you check out our website, which is ventureforcanada.ca. Really excited to join this conversation. Equity, diversity, and inclusion is a critical part of Venture for Canada's work. 53% of our program participants identify as female. Approximately around 42% identify as BIPOC. And in the case of our fellowship program, around 25% of our fellows identify as members of the LGBT community. And I am a member of the LGBT community. I am gay. And so this is something that I relate to on a personal level about the importance of creating inclusive spaces for members of the LGBT community to be able to launch entrepreneurial careers and work in the tech sector more generally. So thank you so much. Looking forward to the conversation today.
Thanks so much, Scott. Really appreciate it. And I will now pass it off to RK. I know RK didn't want to go first, so you'll go second last, RK. I'll pass it off to you.
Thank you so much. So I'm RK Popkin. I'm a group product manager at Google Chrome. I joined Chrome in 2013, and I've been part of its journey to grow and become a web browser that's used daily by billions of people. I currently manage a team of 18 product managers across Canada and the US, and I manage managers. And I've just been humbled by the opportunity that this career has brought me to build a tool that's just used by so many people to access the resources and connection of the web, more recently to go to work and school, and just the opportunity we have every day to lower the barriers people face through our work in software. I'm also an openly non-binary queer person, happily out in my career and all other areas of my life. And I am a recent immigrant to Canada from the US. I arrived here about 1.5 years ago. I'm very passionate about inclusive leadership as a field of study and a field of practice. How can we enable every person we are working with to show up with their whole self, with all of their skills, all of the perspectives from their lived experience? How can we use the workplace as a lab that lets us learn how to connect and collaborate across our differences, which I think is a key skill for humanity to upskill in as we face our climate crisis? And how can we do hard things and challenge ourselves and grow while maintaining psychological safety in the workplace? So these are the questions that I engage with as a manager at Google every day. And I'm very excited to be here to share some thoughts. Previous to my tech career, I also worked in a nonprofit. I ran it to help queer youth connect with each other on the early internet. So a bit in the social services field prior to entering tech. And thank you so much for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you, RK. And I feel like we're having a bit of a Chromeception here. Talking about Chrome, being on Google Chrome, I feel like a Chromeception right now. So I will pass it last but not least off to Samir. Please go ahead, Samir, and introduce yourself.
Thanks, Jillian. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you're joining from. My name is Samir Ismail. I use he, him pronouns. I'm joining today from traditional Algonquin and Anishinaabe territory, what we now know as Ottawa, Ontario. And I call Vancouver home, which is the traditional territory of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. I'm currently Canada's head delegate at the G20 Youth Summit, where I focus on digital transformation. So what I do there is I help negotiate a communique on behalf of Canadian youth that will be presented to G20 world leaders. I've also been a part of the OECD Forum delegation alongside Jillian, where I focus on entrepreneurship, innovation, and the future of work. My day job is a junior analyst at Global Affairs Canada in the Asia Pacific branch, because I'm currently on a co-op term where I'm studying towards my degree at UBC in international relations and political science. I'm very passionate about policy actions around digital transformation in government and the private sector, the impacts on youth and marginalized groups, as well as foreign affairs and how we apply an equity lens there as well. So I'm not part of the LGBTQ community, so I'm very grateful that I'm taking up space here, and I'm conscious that I'm taking up space here, but very excited to share some insights that I have on equity and the future of work, because I've worked on the issue quite closely when I was on the OECD delegation, and also using the digital transformation that's taking place in the workforce right now to foster inclusion is a big focus and passion of mine. So very excited to be here. Thank you.
And thank you, Samir. And as we can see, we have a fabulous panelist here with lots of different knowledge from lots of different sectors. So I would encourage you to ask your questions as we go along. We won't be able to answer them as we go, but we will have time at the end to answer your questions. So please feel free to pop them in the chat, and they will be communicated to us as moderator and panelists. So as Naoufel introduced in the beginning, basically my bio can be summarized as I'm a big nerd. So going into kind of like nerding out about the future of work, and this is something I know Samir and I have had many Zoom conversations about. And it's a question that I'm going to ask Samir and then RK, is about how do you define the future of work? There seems to be not a lot of consensus on what the future of work is, what it isn't, and how do we define it? And again, as a professional communicator, how do we have discussions about something that we don't have consensus on what the definition of it even is? So I'll pass it off to Samir and RK to respond to that first question.
Sounds good. Well, I'm happy to kick it off. And one thing that we really focused on when we were working on the OECD delegation was thinking beyond the digital transformation that's taking place. So I think when a lot of people hear the term future of work, they think of the changes in our workplaces, so them transitioning to more remote or virtual environment. It is that, but it's so much more as well. So the future of work to me is really thinking about how we negotiate human dignity and personal autonomy with the automation and increasing access to information, and as well as entrenched structures of inequality that are present in our societies. So the future of work is how we want to shape our economy for the rest of the 21st century and beyond, in a nutshell. So it should be answering questions, I think is the best way to frame it. So it should be answering questions like, how do we empower young people to get access to work integrated learning? How do we build digital literacy skill sets? How do we protect our workers in an environment where there is environmental challenges, digitization? There's continued exclusionary practices that threaten career development and the viability of numerous jobs. How do we make sure we're taking intersectional approaches to understanding the way that we reform our employment market as a whole? So I think the best way to answer what is the future of work is with more questions, which is not exactly ideal, but that's the best way I can frame it. And I'll pass it to RK.
Sure. So representing sort of the other end of the spectrum, within Google, we've been using the term future of work to mean literally like, how do we transition from 100% remote to a hybrid situation where many people have come back to the office at Google around the world just this week, and many are fully remote, such as me in Vancouver. And how do we construct a workplace that is inclusive of all of those situations? So in Chrome, we've already dropped a couple of policies on people. All meetings must be hybrid inclusive, right? Even if you have most people gathering, we're going to continue to do that. One of our motivations for that is, kind of pre-COVID, our company did so much constant work travel, and that has an enormous carbon footprint that we don't wish to recreate, right? And so for us, future of work has been very tactical and near term, but I do love the expansive and long-term vision that I'm learning about from Jillian and Samir, and I see reflections of that in the policies we are creating as well.
Thank you both. Yeah, I think it's really interesting to think about kind of being active participants in the future of work and us creating the future of work as kind of we the people in the grander schemes, rather than the future of work just being something that passively happens to us. So I think I'm curious to see over the next couple of years. I think COVID has definitely, again, I don't want to silver line COVID. It has been very terrible and lots of bad things have happened. However, it has really accelerated the conversation about the future of work and what that means and what that looks like and how can we be active. Again, we're all very privileged to be in this room right now. We all face different barriers, but we're very privileged to be in this room. How can folks like us, but how can we also expand it to be everyone is an active participant in creating the future of work? So thank you both for that. My next question will be for MG and RK, and I will pass it off to MG first about what are some optimistic and pessimistic futures that you are seeing for the future of work. So go ahead, MG. Oh, MG, you might be muted. So sorry.
I'm sorry. Yeah. We are not used anymore after 2 years of virtual conference where every time there's someone muted. Sorry about that. Yeah, so as you said, one of the pessimistic future I can see with it, and you refer to it, Samir and Jillian, is the gap that it could increase the gaps between the one that can be in this future of work and the one that can't, because of the infrastructure, because of the education, because of so many things that we are not at the same level right now. And also in more, in the business world, you can also see, and we saw this during the COVID, is that some business could adapt, some others were not there yet. They didn't have any infrastructure or any digital team or skills to be able to adapt to this COVID and lockdown situation. So I can see this as a pessimistic way, that it will increase the gaps between the companies, for example, that can are able, like the Google and all the big tech companies that can adapt very fast, and they have the resources, they have the talent to do this fast, and the others like more governmental big heavy processes companies that can go a bit slower because of unions, because of so many other aspects that can make things move slower. Another thing I see also, and that's something we see recently, is that the learning and development team can be disconnected from the market and business reality right now. And we start seeing some, teams that can't deliver the proper skills and the proper training to their staff. And I don't know if you've heard about this story on the TikTok owner who fired all their L&D team because they were not delivering good quality training to the company. So they fired everyone, or they replaced everyone in the company to move to another LED strategy. So that's another thing I see in terms of learning and development as well. For optimistic, yeah, I'm gonna still say a few things about optimistic. Of course, I don't want to be fully pessimistic, but optimistic for sure. More flexibility, work-life balance that could be easier, and digital nomadism also. People won't be fixed to one specific area, but they can move around. So these are the kind of good thing we can see. I can see in the future, thanks to the future of work.
Thank you. I have some similar thoughts about virtual work and geographic distribution. Traditionally, a lot of tech opportunity has been limited to urban environments and cities, and that's meant people had to move and uproot themselves from their communities to pursue tech careers, to come to environments that are much more expensive, that in some cases may not have the cultural resources they're used to. And I have seen during the pandemic, our ability to hire by time zone, not by location, has meant that we made hires we couldn't have made before, and that we have created a more diverse team. For example, our office in Munich, Germany, hired a product manager in Kenya because that's a very close time zone. That wouldn't have happened before, right? And so that's something the future of work has already brought, and he's amazing. And as we try to serve a global audience, we need that, right? We need those perspectives and insights. And so I hope for LGBT people in particular that this flexibility of location can mean we get a chance to live where we're comfortable and safe, where we have community support, where we have our chosen family, and not need to uproot for careers, but still get to access the resources that can come from tech careers and bring those back into our communities, which can be so transformative. In terms of pessimism, I do think the new work environment has made it harder for junior people to ramp up and to form the connections and access the mentorship and sponsorship that you need to get a career going, just because the sort of the office water cooler doesn't exist or is harder to access. And so I've seen as leaders that we need to intentionally create virtual spaces, create mentorship programs, and try to replicate the things that used to happen naturally due to physical proximity. Finally, needing to create a more resilient workplace culture to deal with the pandemic and with climate impacts that have already happened has, I think, made us a better workplace. So I sat down with my leadership team at the beginning of COVID and tried to write down, how are we going to deal with this situation, where anybody can be suddenly away from work for 2 weeks or perhaps much longer, which, was always a situation, right? Things can always happen to people can always quit, but it was going to happen much more frequently. And then part of my team is in California, where there were really severe wildfires, here in BC too. And that also caused people to be away from work and to be very physically and emotionally impacted, right? Like, people need to survive first. They need to take care of their family next. They're going to be a worker or an employee, it's pretty far down that list, right? And I think we want to create workplaces that kind of part of embracing the wholeness of people as humans is recognizing that and giving people the space to deal with those more critical concerns. And so we shifted towards, hey, we need to communicate in writing. We need to have multiple people have knowledge of every area. No, this is my fiefdom and I'm the only one who can do it. We can't work like that anymore. It has to all be collaborative all the time, so that we have redundancy and backup. So that if you need, 3 weeks off because of childcare emergency or illness, that's not a problem for the business, and that we are ready to welcome you back and welcome you to continue your career growth uninterrupted when that's over. I think that also forms the kind of relationship between a person and a company that causes people to want to stay.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you both. Really appreciate it. And I think that that's a really interesting point about both, we tell folks, I hear this sentence all the time, bring your full self to work. But what if you can't bring your full self to work for reasons outside of work, right? And how can workplaces ensure that you don't face backlash or violence or anything? Because those are very real things, especially for BIPOC folks, for Indigenous folks, for Black folks, for queer folks. Bringing themselves whole selves to work is sometimes a very dangerous thing to do. And again, I'm not saying that to scare people, but I'm just recognizing the realities that do exist out there. So I think it's important about kind of, and I think we've now seen that because of COVID, about how can we bring our whole selves to work, and what does respecting the whole self versus just looking at someone as a number or employee actually mean. So thank you both for that. My next question, to kind of dovetail on this nicely, will be for Scott. And it's about, I know we've heard some optimistic and pessimistic things that we can see for the future of work coming forward, or that are currently existing. But my question for Scott is, how can sectors work together to solve some of these issues, or continue building on some of the positive things that we've heard? So please go ahead, Scott.
In the increasingly complex and ambiguous environment that we operate in, I think one of the things that's critical is that people work across sectors more. So what are the three broad sectors that I'm talking about? There's the for-profit sector, there's the public sector, so governments, and there's nonprofit civil society sector. And when we think about these complex issues, in particular relating to the future of work, I think it's increasingly critical that there are collaborations across all three. And by the way, I think also on a personal level, it's really critical that young people develop the skills and ability to navigate between government and for-profits and not-for-profits. So more concretely, what does collaboration look like in terms of how engaging kind of these different groups together? I'll provide a great example from our work at Venture for Canada. We're currently doing a project through the Future Skills Center, which is a organization that funds innovation projects related to training in Canada. And this project is designing a solution which is supporting displaced retail workers to upskill into sales or customer success roles at technology companies in Canada. And we're doing a year-long research project to design the solution. So the Future Skills Center is funded by Employment and Social Development Canada and housed at Ryerson University. So they're involved in the project as a funder and in other ways. Venture for Canada is a registered charity that is the lead on the project. But then in terms of our steering committee, it includes Shopify. It includes the Center for Indigenous Innovation and Technology. It includes Ripen, which is a Canadian technology startup. It includes the Brookfield Institute for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, which is a think tank that's also housed at Ryerson. And numerous other organizations that are involved in other ways, including Generation, which is one of the largest retraining organizations in the world. And I share this as an example because I think when we think about the future of work and when we think about co-creating new solutions, it really requires that collaboration across all three sectors. And how do you create formal mechanisms that bring together these different parts? In the case of Venture for Canada, we have a formal project steering committee for a retail worker reskilling initiative, which formally brings together representatives from all three sectors to co-create and work together on very specific issues related to the project of how we support retail workers adjust in response to the double whammy of the pandemic, as well as challenges with regards to automation. So to answer the question, collaboration is key. Collaboration across sectors is really important. And it's really important that there is a formal structure in place to enable this collaboration. Thanks.
Thank you so much. That's super interesting. And again, always curious to see what's going on in our sister Ontario city of Toronto. I feel like there's always very interesting things. And again, the sector thing is so important to understand what's going on in all three sectors, because all of them, like, no one has a monopoly on a good idea, and they're always, different groups are coming up with different great ideas, different best practices, different research on a daily basis. So I think that's really important to recognize. So in terms of going back to kind of the discussion of the whole self, we know in the pandemic and continuing on that folks face different challenges at different parts of their lives based on how they bring themselves into this space. So someone who, for example, we've seen in the pandemic, who's a parent versus a non-parent versus a caregiver for another individual, has faced very different challenges. And I believe it was MG who mentioned, I'm totally sorry if I'm getting you all mixed up, about the challenges for folks starting off their career. So if we could just have perhaps a bit of a discussion, and I know we've all talked about pivoting. Scott mentioned pivoting for retail workers. So what are some challenges you see for those entering the workforce versus those in the middle of their career or looking to pivot their career. So I'll start with Samir first, and then we'll go to MG. And I feel, if anyone, I know I'm looking at the questions we all looked at before, but if folks want to jump in as well, please feel free to do so with the other panelists. So go ahead, Samir, and then we'll go to MG.
Sounds good. So I think one of the big challenges for individuals entering the workforce is there's this age-old dilemma of wanting to get job experience, but every job requires you to already have some kind of experience in order to get it. So I think that's one of the big challenges for people entering the workforce is they don't know how to build up their experience behind them in order to present themselves in a job application as qualified for a role. So I think there's a couple ways that I've seen that individuals can combat this. And one is to really pursue work integrated learning, and we have to make more of these opportunities available. But that's essentially integrating work within your education. So using things like co-op, work learn, part-time jobs, networking within your field as well is also really important. Building your public profile and putting yourself out there as someone aspiring in the field. And I think it's often a daunting thing to do, but it definitely really can have an impact. So we definitely need to increase access to experiential work for students that is paid, accessible, and education integrated. And then we also need to encourage our employers to be thinking about candidates based on their skill sets rather than fixed years of experience. And oftentimes we have these hard qualifications that are very immovable when it comes to years of experience. So when we think about that shift to a skills mindset, there's also a lot that comes up for people who are in the middle of their careers. And oftentimes it's things like upskilling and reskilling, especially if you're going through a career transition. So I wanted to flag the importance of something called micro-credentials. A micro-credential is a digital credential that essentially recognizes specific skills, learning outcomes, or competencies that are valued by industry and employers. And it's focused to the employer and the skill sets that they need and what will be valuable to them. And what that essentially does is it allows the employee to share the credential with their network or their employers as a digital badge, and it recognizes skills that are related to anything from intercultural fluency to your people skills to your job-specific technology skills. And it allows that employee to have many more opportunities and grow in terms of building their credentials along the way. So I think that's something that is emerging that I think post-secondary institutions need to be taking a look at in much more depth. But that's one way that I'm noticing a transition happening for people who are facing the challenge of trying to upskill or reskill in the middle of their career as well.
Great, thank you. And we'll pass it off to MG as well.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree with Samir. I mean, most of our students or participants to our cohort at Le Wagon are people changing careers. You know, they've been working for 5-10 years in one job and they want to upskill, go into tech, and they need to find a very short, concrete, practical training to be able to do this change very quickly. So I would say the challenge is to have access to some very practical short training to upskill fast because we can't, you know, when you have family or you have kids or even, you know, you already have a master's degree, sometimes a PhD, you don't want to spend 3 years, 4 years in university to keep learning because you just can't afford this time, you know. So good quality training also is very important. And what I mean good quality training is a training that will be able to adapt to the market needs and to evolve with the market needs as well. Support with peers. We've been referring to a community support, to a mentorship. So very important to have access to these community supports wherever you come from, whatever your community is, you know, to have a supportive learning community that guides you throughout your career. And to evolve in your career as well. And also I have to, you know, based on my own personal experience, I used to work in a very traditional government institution for many years, almost 10 years. And when I started to be at Le Wagon, to be involved with Le Wagon, and I did myself one of the bootcamp, the Web Development one. And what struck me is that much more than technical hard skills that I had at this moment when I did this training, it made me think completely differently. So what I learned, you know, during this training was not just hard skills or soft skills, but also a way to think differently, to adapt to this new reality and to the tech industry as well. So this helped me not only to, you know, to grab concrete skills, but also to to understand that there were no more limits in my creativity. I had the power to build things, to create things. I had no limit in my entrepreneurial journey as well, ability. So it's much more than just skills, but also allowing, to unleash people potential so that they could adapt in what's going to happen next, because we are speaking of future of work, but we will always be speaking about future of work because it will be different all the time. So this is this capacity of offering practical short training, but also that will allow us to adapt to this constant future of work we will live in.
Thank you both. And I think the concept of micro-credentials and kind of increased learning, like I think back to when I was in my undergrad almost 10 years ago, and I'm like, oh, that's so out of date now. Like there's so many things that I'm like, oh, that was great. But like, that's a lot of it is like not in date anymore, right? And it's, again, that was not that long ago. And we are seeing technology cycles and learning cycles and social change cycles like speed up really quickly. And again, like this is not RBC saying this, but this was just looking at their video that played right before we were talking about, I'll probably quote it wrong, but it was something like, if you don't think it exists, we're already creating it. And I think that that's so important to think about, is like, it's not just like, okay, what do we need to meet the skill set now, but how can we build and kind of future-proof our skill sets for the future? And how do we kind of continue that reskilling, even if we are in the workplace, so that we do stay relevant, so that we don't fall behind? Because again, things are moving so quickly that it's very hard, or it's very easy to kind of get swept underneath the current and become kind of irrelevant. I don't know, Scott, I'm putting you on the spot here, if you want to talk about maybe some of your experiences in kind of upskilling and reskilling some of the retail workers I think you mentioned, and if there's just some feedback that you could talk about that would be relevant to this conversation about kind of upskilling, reskilling, transition in the middle of your career.
Perfect. And with one thing I want to give a little bit of a caveat is the project we're doing, the Future Skills Center, is a design project. So we have not started the delivery of that project, but happy to speak more generally about how people can sort of shift between industries. One thing that's an interesting misnomer when people think about the future of work is that if you ask a typical person, they say, oh, well, do young people switch between jobs? Or an average person who you're talking to on the street would say, young people today switch jobs way more than young people 40 years ago. That's actually false. It's not backed up by data. Young people today switch jobs just as much as young people 40 years ago. There has been no change. The thing that's interesting, though, what has changed is that people in general, including young people, shift between industries way more than in the past. So industry shifting is rising. Job shifting is not really changing, or in terms of young people. Young people have always moved between jobs quite regularly. So this whole concept of like the flaky millennial or Gen Z being constantly going between jobs, same thing for the boomers when they were starting their careers. So the reason, though, I share this about the shifting industries is one of the things that I think is increasingly important for all workers is to be mindful about making decisions around career shift or industry shifts, that you don't have to just think about working within your specific industry for your entire life, for your entire career. You can completely move to another industry. Now, how do you do that? Like, how do you make yourself more in a better position to shift between industries? It's through investing in transferable skills. It's through investing in things like the ability to manage other people, the ability to communicate, the ability to regulate your own emotions, the ability to think strategically or critically think, the ability to bring diverse sets of information together and synthesize it in an interesting way. Those are things that it doesn't matter what industry you're in, having those kinds of mindsets, having those transferable skills are really, really helpful. And when we think about the future of work, and really, I think the future of work is today, when we think about work today, is increasingly one of the things that's really important is that young people have both technical skills with relevant to their specific industry, and it's important to invest in technical skills, but that people are also investing sufficient time into building those transferable skills, building those people skills, building those socio-emotional skills. And that when you're thinking about your ability to shift between industries, to potentially move from a declining industry to an industry that is experiencing a lot of growth. Yes, invest to some extent in technical skills, because you will likely need technical skills in that new industry. But don't forget to put a sufficient effort and emphasis on developing those transferable skills, because those transferable skills are going to be increasingly important. And one other really important part of this conversation is that when we think about automation, and there's lots of research by David O'Toole from MIT and all these on the impact of automation and the workforce. The jobs that are hardest to automate are jobs that require the ability to work with other people, that require socio-emotional capabilities. The jobs that are easiest to automate are ones that are often the most technical. So that's everything from auditors to even some software engineering roles. And one of the things that I think is really important for people to think about is, if you're trying to future-proof yourself, if you're trying to make yourself more resilient to a world where automation will transform the workplace, invest in the skills that are the hardest to automate. And those are socio-emotional skills. Those are transferable skills. They're going to be needed 20, 30 years from now, regardless of how automation changes the workforce. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Scott. And again, sorry to put you on the spot. And I'm interested to see. We'll definitely have more of a chat about the project you're kind of working on at the moment. So we'll have an offline online chat as we have in the pandemic nowadays. And I think that that's really interesting. And I really like the reframing of socio-emotional skills. I think back in the day, at least when I was younger, they were often called soft skills. And I hate that term, because I find soft skills are often equated with, and again, I always say I'll bring out my gender theory any day of the week, but it's often equated to women. And again, I'm saying women because thinking of it in a binary setting, as it's often thought of, as soft skills are for women. They're being nice to people. They're knowing how to, again, be pleasant. And again, those are not, like, we shouldn't be forcing, again, I'll be using binary language, as these thoughts are often in a binary setting of women shoulder the burden of those roles, where men can just be jerks and be good at their jobs, and it's totally fine, right? And I think that that's something that we're seeing a shift now, is everyone needs these socio-emotional skills. They're no longer referred to as soft skills. And I think soft skills do not give them as much benefit and as much skill. Again, same with communications. Again, went to school for communication, same sort of thing, where it was like, oh, well, the women will do communications because women like to talk. Like, I've literally heard people say that before. And I'm like, that is very gendered and a big problem. And it kind of both pigeonholes men and pigeonholes women and pigeonholes all genders into fitting into these categories where if you have soft skills, therefore you have a more feminine approach, therefore you're getting pigeonholed here. And if you don't have those soft skills, or you have the privilege to not have to invest in those soft skills, I think that's an important thing to think about, is then you can excel without those. So I think that's really important to think about the socio-emotional skills and how they can be transferable. And again, it doesn't matter, I'm sure, working in government, not-for-profit, private sector, whatever. If you can't give a presentation, if you can't manage people effectively, like, that is something that is going to kind of hurt you going forward. And it is a learned skill. As someone who does manage people now, like, I have had to learn so much about managing people. And I think people often think, oh, it's just something you'll learn. It's just something you'll pick up, where it's like, oh no, like, this is a real skill with tangible things that we need to think about. So I am going into the chat here. I'm looking at Andy, who had sent us just a question, and thank you, Scott, for that last moment. The question we have from Andy, and I'm not sure if it's an Andy question or from the audience, so I apologize if it's from the audience. When we look at getting your first role, especially when transitioning into tech, and many applicants aren't able to do co-ops or internships, what do you expect to overcome that lack of experience? How do you augment? Who would like to take that one? And thank you, Arkash, for the lovely comment to Scott. I don't know if, Scott, you're able to see that. So who would like to take that question, which I think is about how do you get the experience without formal co-ops or internships as part of a learning program? I'm going to make assumptions here, but that's what I'm probably thinking that this is about.
I can share some experience from our
Sure,
students?
we'll go to MG, and then I saw Scott unmute himself, so we'll go MG and then Scott. And then if anyone else wants to answer, please go ahead.
Yeah, so there's no one answer, of course, of this question. It's a big question, but I can testify of some of the experience we live at Le Wagon. Most of our, as I said, most of our students don't come from a tech background and they want to transition into tech. Some have more experience, some have less experience. And how they manage to overcome this lack of experience is by working on projects. So during our bootcamp, for example, we are very focused, product focused. So they start building their portfolio during our bootcamp, and then we recommend them to build their own side projects, to contribute to some open source projects. There are tons of them in GitHub, for example. So you can contribute to some nonprofit projects as well. There's always some projects looking for contributors. So the idea is to gain this experience so that you can also connect with more people, show what you do, and most of the time, what I saw is that by gaining this little experience will help you get a first job, an internship, and then you build on this.
It's a great question, and there are so many different ways, I think, to launch your career into tech, even if you're not a currently enrolled post-secondary student and you can't do internships or you can't do co-ops. I think one of the main ways is, as MJ talked about, the opportunity of participating in short duration training programs. So the ability to do boot camps, and there's tons of other, there's beyond boot camps as well. There's the ability to go and you do courses online like Udacity and various others. So I think that's one big sort of segment. The second is, I think, the ability just to pursue self-directed learning, like buying books. I remember one great study that, I heard one person speak when I was in university, and he said his approach to studying to law school was reading a book that he loved, and then going through and seeing all the references at the bottom, at the end of the book. And so basically then reading all the books that are referenced, or the principal books that are referenced in an amazing book. And it's a great practice because then you just I think being an autodidacte, which is in essence somebody who just teaches themselves something, is an underappreciated skill. And it's something that is increasingly important. We have to take control of our own learning journeys. No one's going to do lifelong learning for you. And I think a lot of it, while formal programs like boot camps are amazing, in addition, someone should also be looking at how do they just learn every day, and how do they view every day as a learning opportunity, potentially. I recommend you check out David Kolbe's theory on experiential learning if you're interested in learning more about kind of the pedagogy of lifelong learning. And I would say the third thing is just to build your professional network within a specific sector. So going out and doing lots of coffee chats or virtual chats, reaching out, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. And through these different conversations, you'll gain different insights in terms of what it takes to get into a different role, but also whether you even want to be into that role in the first place. So one suggestion I would give to a lot of people, particularly if you're thinking about doing a career transition, is try to meet with a new person every single week and create certain goals for yourself to consistently push yourself out of your comfort zone and meet new people. So I'll pause there, but those are three tips. Thanks.
Yeah, and I think just to build on what you're saying, Scott, I think people like young people. People want to talk to young people. And especially, I'm sure if you met Scott and you're like, Scott, I think you're really cool and great, and I want to be like you when I graduate. I'm sure Scott would be like, oh, of course, I'd love to. And it's a little bit of flattery gets you places. And it's the same with me. If someone's like, I'm really interested in your career, how did you get there? Do you have 15 minutes? So I think if you ask someone, everyone has 15 minutes. Even the most biggest executive, even if it's in a month from now, if you say, do you have 15 minutes to have a chat? You're not asking for an hour, you're asking for 15 minutes. And I think asking about talking to someone and networking with a specific asking, MG, I'm really interested in how you transition from government to not-for-profit. Can I talk to you about that? MG is more likely to be like, yes, I know what I'm going into. It's not someone who's like, I just want to have a job, So I think that that's something important to say. And then also understanding that people have often different budgets for students versus other employees as well. So often people can hire students in a different way through networking. then people can hire a full-time employee, because again, often students part-time, there's different kind of budget lines. So that's something to keep in mind as well, that there may not be things advertised, but there may be things internally for organizations. And my last thing, I will end it with passing off to RK for our last question here. So I think this is a really important one. We kind of talked about organizations, and now we're talking about individuals. So RK, if you could end us off with, what can individuals do to involve themselves in the future of work?
Sure. So, I mean, I think we're all here at QT's like pursuing tech careers. And I think like, I just wanted to speak in support of kind of tech careers as a way to, you know, future-proof yourself against the kind of the changing work future and like the challenges that we're experiencing now and that are coming. You know, as in terms of my personal experience, like being in tech brought me first financial security, which I was able to use to increase the security of my community in very tangible ways, like paying for other trans people to be able to get their IDs and documents changed because there's fees that form barriers for that, or making donations to human rights organizations focused on our rights that had a lot more work to do, you know, in the last 6 or so years in the US than immediately before that. That this career has also brought me into an environment where it was safe to be authentically myself. And I do want to be real. It did not always bring me that. When I started my career, I was in a conservative environment. I was presenting as a woman, and even that got me kind of so many challenges, right? Like people were not sure that women belonged in technical environments in the place that I started. And so I want to recognize that those environments still exist and that you are the best judge of your own safety and what you're able to do. But when I got to a place where I kind of had enough signals that it was okay to be authentically non-binary, I went ahead and made the leap. And I was already a manager by then. So by doing that, I also knew I was using kind of the power that had been given to me to start to change the area around me. Doing that enabled me to lead more authentically, right? When I do think authentic, inclusive leadership is one of the key skills in the future of work. You know, I couldn't agree harder with what Scott and others have said about these social emotional skills and these skills of how to think, how to learn. These will never go out of style. There's no technology change that will obsolete those. We will always need that to work together. And then finally, very concretely, you know, when political changes in the place I'm from and rising street violence, you know, impacted me personally, because of my tech career, I was able to leave and come to Canada, which is incredibly meaningful in terms of kind of my own literal resilience in the face of changes that have happened politically, which is related to climate, which is related to everything, right? And so I love more queer people coming into tech. I think that, you know, getting more queer people into this industry is so good for our communities, and we are going to be so good for this industry as well, because I think our lived experiences of being different and navigating that prepare us socio-emotionally, you know, for the inclusive leadership challenges in the future of work.
Thank you so much, RK, for again, being, I know it's a word that's overused, being authentic and vulnerable. And I don't mean that in a facetious way. I do mean that truly, and sharing your story, which again, is definitely a very brave thing to do. So thank you for that. And I think that's a lovely moment to end off on. And I'll end off with one more lovely comment from our audience, which was, love this panel. So many useful insights and tips. And I agree. Even myself, I always feel like I learn from these wonderful group of individuals. So with that, I will say thank you to everybody. Merci tout le monde. I hope you have a great rest of your QueerTech adventure for the rest of today. And I hopefully maybe we'll meet some of you in real life. And I will pass it off to Naoufel now to close us off. Thank you, Naoufel.
Thank you so much for that conversation. It was amazing to just listen to the different insights and tips. And again, watching even the community talking on Umbrella or other platform about how much they learned. So thank you again. Merci beaucoup pour le panel et la conversation qu'on a eue. You know, and you know, I just like, I listen to a lot of things, and I think our community and a lot of queer people watch, you know, we're seeing the word is changing so fast than ever right now. And you know, there is so many things that have been accelerated in either with careers or how the word is evolving. And so, you know, as we listen and prepare ourselves for future of work, I think as we mentioned, it's something that's going to continue to happen for a long time, right? The future of work is going to be forever changing, and helping our community to understand that change and adjust to it and be able to keep up and get that seat at the table is what we're trying to do here today. So again, thank you so much for our panel. As you know, there is going to be 3 workshops this afternoon, starting at 1:30 p.m., 2:30 p.m., and 3:30 p.m. So check them out. Really great conversation. We're also going to be launching our participant satisfaction survey. Please take a moment and give us your feedback. We're also looking to get feedback on future sessions, workshops, type of content that you're looking for. So feel free to leave your comments on there. It will help us design events that are a great fit for you. Again, thank you everyone for joining us today. Come visit us at the QueerTech booth. I still have some time slots available this afternoon. If you want to come and chat, you can book time with me. And join us on Discord. It's really great. I've been listening. I've been hearing the squealing sound of Discord all morning, and it's great to see the community coming together. It's going to be a great place for us to be able to talk and connect and also support you, right? We talked about network, and this is your number one opportunity to really build that network. So connect to our Discord. We'll be posting the link is on the screen here, but we'll post it also in the announcement umbrella. And have a fabulous afternoon and get plenty of connections and job interviews. So thank you again, everyone, and I'll talk to you later.